I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. Worship Your holy name. The sun comes up. It's a new day dawning. It's time to sing your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul. Draws near and my time has come. Still my soul will sing your praise unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. Worship Your holy name. Worship Your holy name. Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest. Without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our episode here on Follow Your Faith. We are really happy to be with you here tonight as we ponder this whole idea of forgiveness, hopefully in a little bit of a deeper level. There's your text comments and questions on the screen. You also can talk to us by way of YouTube. Let's begin. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, if as one theologian writes, forgiveness is as essential to us as the air that we breathe. Help us to be more open to forgiveness. The whole idea of forgiveness, of being forgiven ourselves and also forgiving others. And also too, that we might be open to the great sacrament of reconciliation. And maybe we can talk about that a little bit together, all of us. So bless us as we ponder this idea of forgiveness and extending healing, seeing forgiveness and healing as something very much together. So bless us, and we ask all these things in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
So thank you, everybody. Marty?
I just want to start by saying this is episode 60. And I think it's fair to say that when we started this, we really weren't sure where we were going or what was going to happen. I don't know that I ever sat down and said, well, we're going to get to 60 or 70. And it's only because of the folks who are watching.
Absolutely. That's the key.
And we're being very honest now. If you didn't watch, we wouldn't be here, right? I mean, maybe not on a weekly basis. So thank you for that. And it is important, as Father said, we want to hear from you because we get some great ideas sometimes from people who either email or they text or they chat during the broadcast. But
I think the lens kind of came up because of some of your comments as a way of dealing with your comments that you guys had. So that's where the lens kind of came up.
And that's just an example of, because we do not have all the answers as to what we're going to talk about. Sometimes we struggle. We do have regular planning meetings, and sometimes we just sit in a room and everybody looks at everybody else and what do you think? Well, what do you think? Well, what do you think? So anytime that you've got ideas, it helps us. But yes, tonight, another of, let's see, this would be the third in this. It's not really a series, but we'll call it a series because it's the third Lynn book. This one is Don't Forgive Too Soon, Extending the Two Hands That Heal. It's about forgiveness. And the book tackles it from a myriad of different directions. But I want to begin, Father, because it seems to me that true forgiveness is really very difficult for most of us. We want to be forgiven, right? We think we should be forgiven. We accept forgiveness, but we have trouble giving forgiveness. Is that a fair?
And that's part of what this is all about.
But I mean, that is one that, right? I mean, it's hard for us to say, well, okay, you did me wrong. And they cite some examples. I mean, we all know we've been in places where you're going to forgive that person. How are you going to forgive that? Why are you going to forgive that? Why is it so difficult for us? Is it just human nature?
It's funny that you say that. And whenever 9/11 happened, where I had a hard time, and I don't think we did for a while, praying for those persons who did that to us and praying in any fashion for the enemies of terrorism in the United States. I still think I struggle with that.
why wouldn't you? I mean,
Yeah.
when you look at what happened, and that's a great
I'd
example.
like to do, but I think people would be mad or be angry at you for doing it.
And if you're, well, that's to a point is a little understand, but it's like, isn't that what we're taught?
Yes, it is. That's what this book is certainly about.
But okay, let me ask you this way then: if you didn't forgive, you can't forgive the terrorists who were on board those airplanes, and
Or any terrorist, yeah.
but those in particular that were, they knew exactly what they were doing.
Yes, they did.
They were intending to kill as many Americans as possible to destroy icons of our way of life. So we're still supposed to forgive them. All right, what if somebody on that plane was a family member of mine? We're taught to forgive the people on board that
Flight
plane.
93, yeah.
Yeah, there you
Randy
go.
Lovitz, Yeah.
And
yeah.
how do you do that?
Yeah.
Or why do we do that? Why should we forgive people like that?
I think, if I could talk about the person themselves, I think one reason would be because it's the only way of healing ourselves. I think we walk around with a lack of forgiveness in our hearts. As one person put it, and you probably heard this cliche, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Right.
And so we drink the poison and we're kind of destroyed by all that. So I think it's our anger, which we're going to talk a lot about here today. We're right. We think we're right.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore we still are stuck with the whole thing that it has to be a right and a wrong thing. And our ego, our way, all those different things. And also too, if we talk about even the book here today a little bit, we'll just it's kind of skim the surface a little bit. I think sometimes we don't forgive because I don't think we think that person needs to be forgiven because we're the piece of garbage over here. And so why would anybody, why would I need to forgive anybody? What do they care if I forgive them? Because I'm no good anyway. And so I just continue to live in my shame and my guilt. There's all kinds of reasons why we don't forgive, I think.
Before we get into the book, so if I should forgive, something has happened to me, a person did something terrible. I mean, we could use the terrorist example, but
Yeah.
pick one, and I don't forgive. Is that a sin?
Again, you always have to look at circumstances.
I understand.
around
It's
all
not fair
those.
to ask you to
Yeah,
generalize,
yeah,
but
yeah.
if you don't forgive, is that wrong, or is there a little wiggle room there that God would say, okay, I get it. I'd like it. Maybe you're not there yet. Maybe someday you will be. So I'm just wondering if
Let's put it this way. We are called to forgive. And Jesus even says to us, if you don't forgive, I can't forgive you. So he's pretty adamant. As a matter of fact, right by the Our Father, if I can maybe real quickly go
Sure.
to the Bible here, and this just comes to my mind in I think it's Matthew chapter 6, where he goes on to say, after the Our Father here, he says, if you forgive others their transgressions, your heavenly Father will forgive you. But if you do not forgive others, neither will your heavenly Father forgive you.
so. It is a sin.
Well, you can't be forgiven yourself.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. In the book, and the authors are.
Can we just real quickly?
No, sure.
Just what about confession, Jerry? Maybe you want to jump in here and stuff. How can I convince the hardcore about going to confession? What prevents that one?
You mean why they don't go?
Yeah, well, they don't go, and it's almost like they're sort of adamant about it.
Well, and please understand that you asked a question. So
I asked the question. Yes.
I wonder. I think.
Everybody.
I think sometimes you protest too much. I think you push it, and you did again this morning, and you make it. And it. If there's a reason to not trust the process, it doesn't. This is just an opinion. I'll probably get thrown off the show. I won't be here next week. But I'm just saying, if you beat people up about something over and over, and I know why.
I mean, I get nothing otherwise. Unless, and I mean,
Is that-
oh,
I mean, do you
would you
think-
come? Think you'd come? Nah,
Okay,
no.
all right. Let me use myself as an example. And because I went to confession with you a couple of weeks ago for the first time in, I don't know, 20 years or whatever. I didn't believe in the process.
What don't you believe in?
Well, I always had. I always thought that. Let me rephrase that. I wasn't very proud of what I was supposed to confess. So I know that was a part that, like, I got to unburden this, but I got to tell another person what I'm going to tell them. And I mean, it doesn't, I didn't murder anybody or anything like that, but so there was that.
That's not a very high bar, by the way.
Thank you. But the process of, and for me, I thought of confession as what it was when I made my first communion. And it was, forgive me, but it was useless because we were just, we were scared to death and we were making things up. And I've never really understood how to make a good confession. In my case, before we went to face, there was no way I was going because I just didn't, who is that guy in that box? And why do I have to hide and see, this is bad enough. What is this all about? And I'm one of those, and I think there are a lot of Catholics that were like this. Well, if I confess directly to Jesus, why do I have to talk to Father Mark Bagley?
You can't.
I know that. I understand the
Theologically,
theology there, but I'm saying I pray to Jesus all the time. I ask Jesus for things. I talk to Jesus. Why can't I tell Jesus, here's what I did and I'm sorry?
Let me ask you this question. Okay, why can't you go directly to Jesus, as you put it, for the Eucharist? Why can't you go directly to Jesus for baptism?
I think.
Why does there have to be this mediator of this priest person there? And then all of a sudden, when it comes to the sacrament of reconciliation, we leave that out.
Well, because
you're welcome to jump in over here, by the way.
Yeah, please, Jerry.
I think
don't leave me.
I think a lot of it is, first of all, on a basic level, I think everybody's is intimidated by and thinking, "Well, I don't want to talk about things that I've done wrong." I think that's like across the board. Then you have the most adamant about being against it is, why should I tell this to another man?
Exactly.
And
when
a lot of that
science and psychology has already said that this is, and even the Protestants themselves say this is a very positive, healing thing to do.
Yeah, no, see, and I agree with that. It's just that people, I think it's poor catechesis. I think it needs to be explained a little better about persona Christi and not sitting, and everybody, I'm sure the compans are going to come flying in here. Well, I remember when I was in fifth grade and Father McGillicuddy reached through the screen and choked me, and
Well, no, wait. I told, when I had a bad experience with a confession, and it was like, okay, it took me forever to try to convince myself that I should do this. Mm-hmm. And I didn't go because Father Mark Bagley was standing there every week and pointing his finger at me and saying, I mean, that was that's there. But it was like, this has just been gnawing at me. I don't know what else to do.
That's of God. And but I know there's a bunch of the hardcores that I have tried to invite for the last 12 years and gotten nowhere. And all of a sudden I says, it's really not of God of you not to do that. And it's almost like, let them think about that then.
Well, and now it's a different, you can't ignore, and I'm not saying that over time it's been like this, but you certainly over the last 12 years, you cannot ignore the scandal in our church. And then you start, because there are people, I guarantee you, there are people saying, not that you are one of those, but you're one of those priests who were doing these things. And now I'm supposed to go and tell you all the bad things I've done?
It isn't about telling me necessarily,
but
anything.
They don't think of you as who you are, who you They're not thinking that I'm talking to Jesus and that you're his representative.
Well, then you're right. Catechesis or evangelization.
Right. Exactly. And it's never been explained. It was always, when we were younger, you have to do this. You have to come up with things to say in that confessional.
I never thought that.
Oh my Lord! I beat my brother, or not beat my brother, but I yelled at my brother. I did this, blah 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 blah, because that's how we were taught. And I thought, well, there's nothing going on here. And then we were confirmed in, I believe it was 8th grade, and we're confirmed now. We don't have to go back to CCD. We don't have to do any of this stuff. We're done. We hit all the metrics.
See, this is the church at its worst.
I'm not saying that.
Believe in that.
I think Jerry hit on something though. And when I said about you, when you constantly tell people you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, there is a tendency, it's just human nature, to rebel even more, right? You tell them, you got to do this, why can't you do this? I don't understand why you're not coming here. And you're going, wait a minute. Because it's such a personal decision. If you're going to confession as you should be, or reconciliation, forgive me, but it's confession.
It's all right. It's all right.
But
It's
if
all
you're
right.
going, it's because you've made a decision within yourself that you need to unburden. Now, I'll be honest, while as difficult as it was for me to go and talk to you, it wasn't because I don't trust, I didn't even think of you as a person. You were the conduit, okay?
Good. All
Right?
Yeah.
So that didn't make it easier, but it made it a little easier because I'm not talking to Mark Bagley. I'm talking to Father Mark, who is the conduit to Christ, but it still didn't make it any easier to do it.
No, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's healthy, and I'm saying it's healing. And I'm thinking, like, why aren't we buying in to such things?
Jerry, before you jump in there, well, here's one thing. I guarantee you, some people who aren't coming are saying, "Well, I didn't do anything that bad that needs to be confessed anyway." I'm not making judgments. I'm just saying they're saying, "Yeah, it wasn't that bad."
A lot of times I go around to different confessions. People do say things. Well, I didn't do anything. Yeah, that's the problem. You didn't do anything. You do something,
Or what I
get
did.
involved in the game a little bit. I want to shout through you got to do something here. But
But what I did wasn't that bad.
If I just sit at home and watch TV and swear every once in a while, gee, that ain't it either, So
Jerry,
anyway.
you were.
I'm
I have this
ranting here a little bit.
discussion with my Protestant friends and relatives, and of course they quote, I think it's the book, James says, confess your sins to one another and pray that you be forgiven.
Yeah.
First thing I say is, so who do you confess to? Nobody does that. And as my time as an evangelical, I confess to Jesus plenty. But I'll tell you what, when I first came back to reconciliation, I never felt more forgiven. I never really felt like talking to someone and that priest saying you're forgiven. There's there's something that happens there.
I don't disagree with you, and I've had two moments like that in a confessional or in a meeting room. Actually, both of them were not in a confessional, and you're right. It was liberating. It was. The cliche of a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders, but it was cathartic. It was like, okay. But it took a lot to get there. And I don't think that and I'll go back. Jerry's got a good one there. Catechesis. People aren't taught.
But they're not thinking it through either. I believe, and this is you could tell if I'm wrong. I believe that something somehow to jar them into another way of looking at it somehow, and almost like if someone came at me after mass and said, "You're picking on me because I'm going to." Well, yeah, maybe I am.
Well, you
Maybe
are,
I am.
and I'm not saying that was wrong. I think some people would look at that and say, "Oh man, he keeps talking about this. He keeps telling me I have to do this." Well, that's just making me. It's like a child. The more you tell a child don't do something, know that child's going to go do it.
Yeah,
you just know it.
I agree.
And
Yeah.
I'm not. That's a lousy excuse, but I think it's. And again, it could be a myriad of things. Maybe there were people in that group that were like me, poured my heart out, and it didn't go well.
Well, that's all possible. And it hasn't always gone well with me either, but I still always knew I was forgiven. Always knew I was forgiven. Anyway, I understand that. I just think that somewhere, I want, my whole thing is they haven't thought about it very, very seriously. And I think if you think about it a little bit seriously, I think all of a sudden, I got to do something here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think people haven't thought about it seriously, and there are a lot of other things, like, well,
That's why I wanted to think about it seriously. I guess is what I'm trying to do.
yeah, but I mean, if you walk into a church and it's a reconciliation service, and there's 30 people in the line you're in, everybody's counting how long it is while you're in that confession. I'm just saying that, that's human nature.
That's why we changed our thing around.
Oh, you don't?
Yeah,
I
we won't
haven't
do
been
that.
to a mass, so what do you mean you've changed?
We have those 2 evenings of reconciliation. People
Right.
can come and go as they wish.
Okay, so it's not like it's got to be during.
Yeah.
So the confessions, not the penance services at the other. By the way, your text arrived as promised.
I saw it. Yeah.
The text arrived as promised. But the confessions that you will have between now and
3 days.
Easter, the
Yeah.
3 day. Well, yeah, before Holy Thursday. That's there's not a lot of people waiting in line. You're not being pressured to get in. or
There
get
was
out.
some on the one evening, but there was some evening. But
I mean, that's not a reason not to do
Yeah,
it. I
yeah.
guess is
But
what
but
I'm
there
saying.
there were some, and it didn't seem like it was too bad.
Jerry.
There's a text comment. the text comments, everybody knows. Everybody can see their own comments on here, so you're all talking to each other. Here's a text one that you're not seeing. And she's talking about, I know it's a she, I know who she is talking about the bad experiences and so on. So then many of us were afraid of the priest and didn't feel healed afterwards. Maybe helping people understand that when you go to a priest like Father Mark as an adult, it's more like talking to a friend or a therapist. I think it's hard for people to disengage from those old memories.
It really is for a lot of people, and I appreciate that too. But
You know, and if I
the
could
search
throw-
always has its lumps in it.
if I could throw in a little story, one time, when I really felt like, I really wanted to go to confession, there was several priests, and I picked one who I was the most afraid of. I thought that he was a scary person. I'm not going to share his name because he turned out to be. I thought, okay, this guy's going to be hard on me. I want somebody to be hard on me. Fine, I'll do this. And he was wonderful. It was, people go in with these things, I think the worst confessor I've gone to is someone that was like kind of, well, okay, you're all right. It's good and do this or that, nothing amazing happened. But I just thought, we have a misunderstanding about people because of the way he presents himself at mass or in person, he's shy or whatever. But this guy it was great.
One time in Pittsburgh, this is after my conversion, and I think I slipped into something that wasn't really good of my old past one time. And there's a little monastery that was down in Avalon. There was a little monastery down there. I used to go there for mass every once in a while. I called this priest at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to confession, and he picked up, and he invited me over, and I went over to go to confession. It was about 2 miles. I walked, and to go to. I called him at 6 o'clock in the morning to go. I just needed to do this, and I did it, and I had slipped into some of my past stuff a little bit, and I never forget that.
Did he
God
say
bless him.
anything like, "I'm not picking the phone up next time"?
I said, I am sorry. I will not do this to you again. But I just had this conviction. I think, believe it or not, I think I called him from a payphone. This is before cell phones. I think I called him on a payphone or something.
Are you under obligation to do that? I thought like you're almost supposed to. If someone comes to
Yeah,
you,
if someone comes to you in an ordinary fashion, yeah, I mean, if it's not an emergency, like at that point, he could have said to me, "I'll see you at 9."
Meaning,
Something
I
like
can't
that.
do it now, but I will
Yeah,
do
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And I don't want to belabor this, but this is a young person who's a member of this parish who just texted me and said, the reference was to the priest scandal. And he said, why would God give that guy, meaning the priest, the power to cleanse my sins, especially if his are way greater? Again,
Yeah.
that doesn't apply.
And that's a good question. Why God would? Because God did. God does.
And I think that's what I meant. The question, whether it's related to that particular incident, the question of God is giving you the power to forgive me.
Even if he gives me the power, it's ridiculous. Look at, I got the power that bread and wine becomes the body and blood of Jesus Christ. What? I stand up there thinking I am so unworthy almost every single time.
And I think
Any human being would.
and I think that's understandable, but that transubstantiation process.
Yeah,
okay, that's something we believe. We believe in the body and soul, all of that. But we're not involved in it directly. Directly involved is going in a box and telling you what I've done. That's a totally different story. That
It's
is removed
psychologically,
from,
it's
it's
totally
removed from
different,
our faith. That's raw, real life.
Yes. And and raw real life is what we need. A
Yes,
lot
Jerry, I'm sorry.
Wally threw something in here that you could spend a lot of time maybe unpacking this or how it really does applies. But he talks about Christ specifically calls us to, quote, show ourselves to the priest. And I'm wondering if that really is an image. There's
That's
I
the
can
leper.
think of other
The
reasons.
leper. Yeah.
Because I think the priest probably had to confirm that you were clean or something. But maybe there's more spiritual depth to that, and I don't want to
Yeah,
go
but
down a different road.
we're not taught that.
But the thing is, we need these visible. We need visible signs. We need somebody with skin on. And when we go directly to God, which you cannot do, by the way, when you go directly to God, that's so much easier because you're not really engaging a person. Once it's almost like you're confessing into thin air. And you can duck and dodge, and it can be a great big illusion to do that. But when I'm in front of another human being, all of a sudden that changes everything.
So forgive me, but I can't have a conversation with God.
You can have a conversation with God, but in the sacramental order, every single one of the sacraments requires this intermediary.
But we're encouraged.
I talk to God all the time. I
Right.
talk to God all the time. But at the same time, in this regard, for somewhere along the way, the wisdom of God and the wisdom of the church, when it comes to these things, if we're truly going to be honest with ourselves, psychology, like Freud knew that somewhere along the way, if I am talking to another human being, that could be more medicinal than just me. Let's suppose I got in the middle of a field and I got to tell my problems to a tree. It's not going to change much.
Didn't you say this morning, if I ask God for something, he will grant it?
If it's his will.
Okay. So I'm going to confess what I've done, and I'm betting a lot here that your will is that you're going to forgive me. I'm sorry.
Sure. But it's not, I will. Yeah.
So I think that there's a reason why people would think. I agree with you. I understand what you're saying about that conduct.
Again, the AA thing applies too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right.
So, all right.
Let's move on.
all right, okay.
Let's go to the book because
Okay.
we're never going to.
Let's go to the first question, Marty.
Yeah. Thank you, Jerry.
I'm sorry we had to believe. I think about that all the time, and I know I've been kind of hard about all that, but I'm thinking after 12 years, I got a little bit
Yeah,
of cred to be able
you
to
do.
say that to
You
you.
do. I just wish you'd have
You
let
know.
me know you were going to do that before we started. I would
know.
have moved this stuff around
know,
here.
I know.
All right. In the book, they write about what they call the 5 stages of forgiveness. So I don't want to talk about these, but they do it in an interesting way. And you read it in the book, you see it. When they trying to outline each step, they do it as how it would relate to dying and forgiveness.
Yeah, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's five steps to the process of death and dying. Yes.
So when you like their first stage in the stages of forgiveness is denial. And they say, as an example, in death, we don't ever admit that we are dying. In forgiveness, I don't admit I was hurt.
Right.
But
Now,
so that denial, why would I have to go to confession to tell anybody this? I'm just going to deny that that's going to make any difference.
and I wrote down in my notes right here, whenever I have been hurt or I've done something really stupid
Right.
and I'm in denial, that's when I lose sleep at night. That's when I can't sleep.
Okay.
Because I know it's down there. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to face it. And by the way, if you look at the cover of the book here, there's all these animals floating all over the place. And so they assign an animal to each of these 5 steps. And the animal they assign here is the ostrich. And
Put
they
the
show
head in the
him with
sand.
his head in the sand. So whenever I know deep down inside something's troubling me. I don't want to think about it. But whenever you go to sleep at night, you go to sleep at night and you're laying there, and all of a sudden all the garbage from inside comes flying up, and it's there, and I keep pushing down, and that just I can't sleep. So whenever I can't sleep at night, that's when I know I'm in denial of something is going on in my life. And here's a quote that they say right here. It says, either we pretend that we have not been hurt at all. That really didn't hurt that much.
Mm-hmm.
Or we ignore the real hurt and focus on less hurtful aspects of it. I'll do that too. Moreover, current hurts may trigger unresolved pain from similar earlier hurts about which we are still in denial. So we're in denial of all kinds of things. And I think that kind of thing can cause a certain neurosis in people's lives, that pushing things down all the time. And I think if you want to get a definition of depression, even though we're going to get to depression here and all this, I think that's the war that goes on inside of us because I'm not facing something inside of myself that I've hurt somebody or I have been hurt. So I think that's denial is a pretty, and they even say it in the book, they say it causes a certain amount of physical health problems, this denial.
Jerry?
This kind of goes along with that. Why does God only want us to speak aloud what we have done wrong or failed to do? Why are we never to share anything good? It seems the lack of balance to only look at sin. I think that's I think we do that. We should be doing that all the time.
I think the good things we do don't require it so much because we're pretty healthy whenever that happens. I think Jesus is trying to save us from the pain, from all that.
Step 2, anger. They're examples. In dying, it's their fault that I'm dying. In forgiveness, it's their fault that I was hurt. It's not me, it's everybody else. Me against the world.
Right.
Anger.
Revenge, anger. And of course, the porcupine is the animal here with all this. So anger, this is not one of my worst ones because I usually beat myself up over that. I'm not one of the anger, but revenge, I'm going to get them. That's kind of like what happened. I'm going to get them. And whenever we do all that kind of stuff, and they tell different stories in here about all that, I think that's where anger kind of comes into play. I'm just going to jab them anytime I get a chance to do
And
that.
you're not willing to forgive when you're angry.
You are not willing at all. No, not at all.
Third step, bargaining, which I thought was interesting. And here's how they set it up. In dying, I set up conditions to be fulfilled before I'm ready to die. And in forgiveness, I set up conditions to be fulfilled before I'm ready to forgive.
Now, I think it's interesting with bargaining to die, and I think bargaining this way too. If it's bargaining with God, it's like, I'll forgive if you do this or if you do that. If
Yeah,
it's
I'll forgive that person who did this to me if
yeah.
you make sure that I get a 20% raise instead of a 10%
Yeah.
raise, right?
Or the bargaining with dying is then, I'll quit smoking.
Yeah,
I'll eat right. I'll do all the. I don't want to die. I'll eat right. I'll do all those different things. Now, in the bargaining one here, they kind of have a quote here. With that, it says, needs not necessarily bargains. They become bargains. Needs are not necessarily bargains. They become bargains only when their fulfillment becomes a precondition to extending forgiveness.
Yeah, the little cartoon. I'll forgive you if.
Yeah. And the image they have for this one is the cat and a mouse, and you're the mouse, and you're telling the cat, I'll forgive you if. And the cat's like, who cares if you forgive me if?
Well,
But
that is
the whole
Tom and
idea of
Jerry.
bargaining.
I mean, that was the whole point of Tom and Jerry.
Yeah. And so that's the big thing with that one.
All right, the fourth stage, and this is the one that this impacts so many people. It's depression.
Yes, it does.
In dying, you're depressed because it's my fault that I'm dying. In forgiveness, it's my fault that I'm hurt. You take it all on yourself, and there are people that are treated that have suffered from depression. I'm one. I've been in and out of therapy. A lot of people, medication, whatever. We all deal with depression in different ways, but it's always about putting it back on us, right?
It's kind of funny. I was talking to the parents. They're all millennials of the second graders. And I was saying to them, unless you have some kind of a foundation in your spiritual life, by the time you hit our age, 71 years old, you are going to battle depression for sure. Because I think when you hit our age, depression is always at your door because you haven't done the same. You've done the same thing. Even you're back to work. You've done the same thing. I've been a priest for 38 years. Nothing here about this excites me much as far as I get to do it for the first time. I'm not doing anything for the first time. I've been doing this over and over and over again. And so after a while, you either run out of mojo or you run out of energy or whatever else it is. And so why do I do it now has to be completely different than the way I did it then. And I think also to many people, I think the whole, as Nouwen says, the greatest impediment to the spiritual life is self-rejection. So if I have been hurt, I think I do this. It's my fault. I must have done something stupid. Even if I did something, my fault. And so the toxic guilt and the toxic shame. Now, there's two kinds of guilt and two types of shame. Guilt, when I've done something wrong, I say I'm sorry to somebody else. That's good. And I go to confession, I'll say, I've forgiven, asked for forgiveness, I'm done. If it hangs on, the guilt does, that is never of God. Never of God. Because if I have confessed or I have said I'm sorry and it hangs on, never of God, that's called toxic guilt. Then there's toxic shame. Guilt means I've done something wrong and I cannot be forgiven for it. I can't remember how many people have said to me, I can't be forgiven for this. And a toxic shame is, toxic guilt is I've done something bad. Toxic shame is I'm bad. And so I think a lot of people think because of that, they're bad, that somehow or other this toxic shame hits them and prevents them from forgiving and being forgiven. And of course, as you know, there's a sad dog, like this pathetic looking
It's
dog.
a basset hound. And
Yeah,
they
yeah.
always like, oh, that poor dog. What
Yeah.
happened to that dog? Well, that
Yeah.
dog just looks so sad
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Last stage is acceptance. And I think that's, forgiveness. I mean, it's difficult to accept, right? That it's difficult to accept that I've accepted the fact that I am a sinner and I'm going to confess it. It's much more difficult. You harmed me, and now you've apologized, and I'm accepting your apology. I think that's one of the toughest things any of us do.
Yeah, I think for me, the toughest thing, what's tougher? Being forgiven or forgiving? You're saying forgiving is tougher.
I think it is because it involves me. Being forgiven, you're forgiving me, but I really don't know if you're forgiving me. It's something you said, but I know within me.
If I really believe that you're forgiving me for something I did, I'm on cloud nine. I think it's easy for me. I would rather not trust that you're really forgiving me because I think I'm bad. Okay,
I guess maybe that's what I was saying in a roundabout.
yeah,
because I know me.
Yeah.
You don't
Now,
know me.
If you hurt me and I say I forgive you, I'm pretty much good usually. Pretty much I'm good.
Do you accept it, or you just think, you know what, they don't want to deal with it, so they're just
No,
saying,
in other words, I forgive you.
yeah.
I'm happy that I can do it.
Okay.
I'm more happy I can do it. And whether you're going to go do it again or something, that kind of gets into some other parts of the book here.
Okay.
But acceptance means that I have worked through all this, the depression, the bargaining, the anger, and everything else, and I'm good. I mean, I'm not a victim anymore. You're not the oppressor anymore. You're another human being working it through. I've worked it all through. I've asked for forgiveness, or I've forgiven you, and I'm at peace. And of course, it's a dove with a what is that in his mouth?
It looks like a daisy. It's some sort of a flower, like we present flowers as a peace offering.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Yeah, so it's a dove with a peace offering.
Yeah,
So
because I don't think doves are fond of any particular flower, or
Yeah,
but I
okay.
think that's what it is.
I was thinking about the doves during Noah at the ark. I forgot what they bring back again. I forgot what they brought back.
yeah.
A tree, a leaf, or something.
Right, but think about it. You give flowers to somebody, it's like it's meant to show affection, or it's like husbands know this very well. They send flowers when Jerry, don't sit there and look like you've never done this. They send flowers when, okay, I'm really sorry, and I don't mean that the flowers are going to make you forget it, but it's just to say, I get it. I'm trying to be a little humble here.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's why that.
There's a little quote here. In acceptance, we are grateful for the new life that has come from the hurt, a new life that actually
Yep.
comes from the hurt. So then there was the hurt somehow has been redeemed in all of us. We're not grateful for the destruction we've experienced, but now this seems less than the new growth of giving and receiving life with God, others, universe, and ourselves. And I want to say before we go on, just real quickly, I know you have something there. They talk about the book Good Goats in here a lot.
And they don't
Apparently-
like. There are a lot of people that don't like.
A lot of
Good
people
Goat.
that ripped on them about that
Yep.
book, and so they said that they did so much study on the theology of that book that they were adamant it was going to be spot on in Orthodox Catholic thinking. So just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, they do say that, but they
Yeah.
get a lot of pushback. They
Yeah,
get a
they
lot.
did.
All right, we're going to move to another part of the book, and the authors call this the signs of creative solutions emerging to fit those stages. But
Right.
to kind of start this conversation, let's go to Matthew chapter 5, verse 38 to 42. And we have all heard this. This is probably, they claim it's perhaps one of the most unpopular texts in Scripture, the classic passage on forgiveness. I won't disagree with their assertion that it is very unpopular.
Yes.
Matthew
yes,
wrote, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile." And I think it's unpopular because you're sitting there and you're listening to that, and you're going, what? What do you mean? Why? Why do I have to, you just came over here and you tried to ruin my life. And now I'm supposed to say to you, well, I've got another life. Why don't you ruin that one too?
Okay.
What? I mean, this turn the other cheek thing. It's
All right.
difficult to accept, isn't it?
All right. Yeah.
And you were the one that wanted me to make sure we got this
Yeah,
in here.
yeah, yeah.
So help me
That's
out.
that's the olive branch. That's it. Peace branch, olive branch. That's what the dove has in there. So
Oh, okay.
let's
That's
talk
what
about that. Let's talk about this text now. So Jesus is in a Sermon on the Mount. He's going further. He's going further than the law. Eye for an eye, and tooth for tooth. Now, here's the thing with all of this. Every single circumstance. Oh, this is called creative solutions.
Right. That's what they call it.
These creative. In other words, how can we non-violently respond to the violence in the world in such a way that we somehow shut down the violence? And folks, we need to shut down so much violence in our world today. It's funny because we always react eye for an eye or tooth for tooth. We're still back to Old Testament. Each of those circumstances that they offer there is about a person who is a subordinate who has no power whatsoever. I want to tell you a story that they tell in the beginning of the book, and then I'm going to talk about each one of these three things. The story in the beginning of the book was whenever in South Africa,
Yep.
they were going to bulldoze this whole little neighborhood. The white folks were that these black folks lived in one of these townships down there in absolute utter poverty, but it was their homes. It's all they had left. These bulldozers show up. The men are all off at work, and we're gonna bulldoze your houses right now. We can give a crap about you whatsoever.
Exactly.
They're all women that are standing there in front of these bulldozers. What are they gonna do? And these Afrikaners apparently are rather prudish in many, many different ways. So what they decide to do as a form of nonviolent protest is take all their clothes off. And so these women are standing there buck naked in front of these construction guys. And they're like going, what are we going to do now? And so they stop and they save their homes because they did that. This is the kind of nonviolent protest Jesus is talking about here. Now, let's talk about the first one, turning their cheek. Now, a master would a slave would always backhand. So, in other words, a master with a slave would backhand. A husband, listen to this, folks, sorry about that, but this is what's in the book. A husband can backhand his wife as a way of teaching her to be in her place back in those days. A master can do the same thing with a slave. An employer to employee, backhand. So if I backhand Marty over here, I'm hitting you on your
Right cheek.
I'm hitting you on your right. I'm hitting you on your.
Well, this is my left cheek. This is
Okay.
if you backhand
So,
me.
yeah, right.
You're right. You're using your
Yeah.
back
It's-
of
it's-
your right hand on his
it's-
right
right.
cheek.
But it's
Right. It's on my right cheek.
when someone slaps you in the right cheek, I backhand your right cheek. If you turn me the other cheek,
Right.
then I have to hit you this way.
Yeah.
This way, which means I hit you as an equal.
Yeah, but I still get hit. That's the
still
point.
get
I'm
hit.
just saying.
But now
if I'm turning the cheek, I'm going, wait a minute. I'm still
What other option do I have?
whatever. Oh, I have another option.
No, you're a
You're
slave.
forcing
You
them
got
to admit
nothing.
that you're your equal, and you're
I
not
am
submissive
forcing.
to them.
You're
Okay.
forcing me to act as an equal. Like Mary, for example. Mary standing at the foot of the cross. I don't
Yeah.
forget. Kathleen, if you're watching right now, Murin, if you're watching, remember we did a talk over in the over in the church about the seven sorrows, and it's about Mary standing at the foot of the cross. Mary didn't grovel. Mary didn't cry. She didn't rip and tear. She didn't scream and sob. She stood there. And as a woman standing there was a sign of protest. That's all she had left to do was stand there. So standing there before the cross, I'm standing with my son. I'm standing there. That is a sign of protest. Now back to the other one. When someone wants to go to the law over your tunic, give him your cloak. A cloak was something that was the most important garment that the people had. They slept in it. It's all they had left to sleep in. And so there was a law in the old law that you can take as collateral someone's tunic, which means that's their shirt, basically. But you can't take their cloak overnight. So if a guy says, "Oh, you took my tunic, here's my cloak," and he's saying, "Oh my God, I'm leaving this guy buck naked, laying in bed all night long. How can I do that?" And he would be shamed. The creditor would be shamed by making the person who borrowed whatever give over his cloak as well. It's a way, again, of somehow protesting an unjust law, of doing something like taking someone's cloak.
Okay.
The third one was a Roman law. A Roman soldier's pack was about 60 pounds. And he could get a civilian to carry his pack for 1 mile. That's as long as he could. So imagine some Roman soldier making you carry your pack from 1 mile. And then you say, oh, I'll carry it 2 miles. You can imagine this Roman soldier begging you to get his pack back. So again, here is somebody subordinate who's powerless that's trying to protest an unjust law where he had to carry for 1 mile, carries for 2 miles, and imagine this Roman soldier calling after him to get his backpack back. So it's a way of someone who has no more power to be able to protest what's going on. And he gives a bunch of others, like there was the mom who had the kids, the one son, you're supposed to set the table before dinner, never does it. So one day he doesn't do it. She makes spaghetti and just grabs the spaghetti, and everybody's sitting around the dinner. There's no table being set, slaps it right on the table. Each of the different things, and slaps it right on. They're all like, well, what are you doing? Well, nobody sets the table. Here's dinner. Then she puts the salad on top of it, puts the salad dressing on top. There's your dinner. And she said, gee, all of a sudden everybody started setting the table.
They thought it was Jerry, you had your hand up. Was that saying that you were doing that? That's what your mom did that to
that's
you?
what I did.
Or do you have a comment in there?
I just
Because
said
you
spaghetti
perked right
all over
up
the
when he
table.
talked about slamming that spaghetti on the table. Your hand went right up in the air. Go ahead. What do you got?
Anita brought up a good thing. She brought up Gandhi, and I was thinking
Sure.
about this too. Gandhi, the first time he read the Gospels, he got this right away.
Absolutely
He didn't need
got
response.
it.
He got that right away. And whenever he mentioned it to his Christian friends that were trying to turn him on to Christianity, his Christian friends actually said, well, no, that's not really how we look at this, and that just befuddled him. And Nita quoted him saying, Gandhi said, if we followed an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, the world would soon be blind and toothless.
Which is getting to be that way.
Yeah.
I think, there's another one about the KKK was having a meeting one time, and they were about getting rid of all the Latinos in town, and so there was a mariachi band that actually, played outside the meeting they had. So I mean, these are different ways that powerless people can somehow be able to protest. That's what they meant by signs of creative solutions
emerging. And,
Yes.
they fit them to the 5 stages that we talked about earlier,
yes.
like denial. And this is this is how they say is a good way to handle this. I let myself be loved until I'm ready to face the pain of the hurt. Gradually, I stop pretending that nothing happened and begin caring for my hurt as I recognize that you're an oppressor and I'm a victim. So you're not taking responsibilities there. You're denying, but you're a little closer than you were just by denying.
And may I say with that one, whenever I tell someone else
Right.
that I'm in denial about something that hurt me, just anybody. If I walked up to Jerry and I said, Jerry, I got to tell you something, man. I'm in denial about this person that hurt me really, really bad. I'm in denial. I just want to share this with you. I would feel 100% better just by telling you that.
Yeah.
Just by telling you that hurt me. I get my head out of the sand and I got it out there. Okay, now I'm actually facing what happened to me.
Jerry, you got another one?
You're getting a lot of good comments and stuff. How about forgiving 70 times 7 and being a manipulated patsy?
Yeah.
Manipulated.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that kind of goes along with what we're talking
Of course not. Of
Yeah,
course
right.
not. And they addressed that in here that you cannot do that. Some of those protests they got against Good Goats, they put a lot of time into responding to people and not responding. Oh, we're sorry we upset you. We're sorry we were bad. We're sorry that you didn't like our theology. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. When you want to engage in us in mature conversation about some theology, we'll do that. Quit bashing away at our character because you disagree with us. They did that all the time.
Yep. All right. Stage 2 was anger. I want to change you so you're not an oppressor and I'm not a victim. As I move through anger, I gradually consider you're more of an essentially good person, capable of wonder and worthy of compassion. That's a way of dealing with anger, right?
I think what that means for us is that you begin to realize that person has a lot of pain too. That person's got his issues too.
They're carrying a lot.
Why they are the way they are, it's got for some reason the way they are.
Bargaining. I discover what you need to stop being an oppressor and what I need in order to stop being a victim.
Yeah.
So
Equals,
right.
yeah.
I'm trying to share it. I'm trying to feel it. I'm trying to own a part of it because we don't own enough of it.
I agree. And stop the cat and mouse game. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Depression. I want to change myself so I'm not a helpless victim. As my guilt and my shame heal, I gradually feel less like a helpless victim and more like an essentially good but fallible wonder carrier worthy of respect.
Whenever I got to this and I was reading, I was thinking about my own depression and
Okay.
back in my 20s. And I think, I was in depression because my life was a mess. And I thought and going back I thought I was the reason for it. Depression. I was the biggest reason for my life being an absolute mess.
And
Wasn't
just-
blaming anybody else.
So you were in the seminary and you left the seminary and then you ended up going back, right? Isn't that true?
Well, I left the seminary at the age of 20. I went in at the age of 17.
Right.
First 3 years of my life. Then I went on a kind of a 4-year binge.
But was that when your depression was at its
No,
okay.
no. That's when my anger was at its worst.
So
I was still blaming everybody else for my life.
so you lived what we're talking.
Yeah, I was a whiner by every definition as a whiner. But whenever I started making permanent commitments in my life that were not ones I was supposed to make, that's when depression hit.
Went into the seminary at 17, the worst 3 years of my life. How long did it take you to be able to say that?
First of all, it took me 30 years to even tell you about that.
And I'm only, but the reason
Those 3
I'm
years
not
were not
trying to
good.
I'm not trying to ask you to open up, but I've heard this before. You've talked about this before. So there were a lot of these things going on. There was anger,
Yeah,
there was denial, there was depression. I don't think
A
there was
lot
any,
of depression, a lot of
I don't think
anxiety.
there was any acceptance in what was going on.
Not
that
at this
time.
point, no.
So who did you blame for the worst 3 years of your life? Was it God or you or somebody in your life?
I don't think it was God. I think it was the leadership of the place where I was. that
So
I
it was not, but you were angry. You were,
I was a pain in the ass too, by the way. Sorry about that. I was a pain. They said left, I went right. I said right, go left. I questioned I was a major annoyance to them, but I had one particular person in particular just hurt me in a way I've never been hurt before. And it stuck with me for quite a while. And I think the anger about all that.
How in the world did you get back to seminary?
Well, by the way, let me say this. The second seminary I went to was the best 4 years of my life.
So
there was,
was the environment you were in, the people you were
mostly it
with?
was about me. I was unconverted.
You didn't want to listen. You didn't want to accept what they were laying down.
No, and I wouldn't have accepted anything they were laid down. See, this is back in the late 60s, early 70s. This was the time of protest, man. This was the time of the Vietnam War. And I was protesting everything. And they were very traditional, and I was disappointed. Disappointed. What I wanted to do in the seminary, what I wanted to do, they weren't interested in, and where I wanted to go with it, they weren't interested in, and they were sort of, anyway, it's a long story with those guys. But my depression hit in my 23, 24. And whenever I started to find that if I have to, I began to realize I have to change my life. And as I gradually slowly began to change my life and listen to not what's going on in my head, and listen to other people, Norman Vincent Peale I was reading, other people I was reading, once I began to, the depression started to lift. And the more it started to lift, the more I changed my life. And the more I changed my life, the more it lifted. So I began to face this war inside of myself that was going on. And I realized that I'm living my life in a completely inauthentic way. And so now I have to change my life. So no longer was I was the helpless victim. I was fallible, but all of a sudden the depression was important to me to be able to change my life. And then in the midst of all that comes this great conversion experience. And then all the thing began to happen with all that as well. I know I'm being vague on purpose because I have to be
That's okay. Did you forgive the people of that first seminary experience?
That took a while, and I have forgiven that person, and that's taken a lot of therapy to do that. I've been in therapy too. My spiritual director was a psychotherapist, and so I would talk about this stuff. And where I learned to forgive all of that was in the seminary the second time. one of the most important persons in my life. If Helen Keller's teacher was Annie Sullivan, my teacher at Mount St. Mary's was Anthony Minocchio. And I told him my whole story. And he sat there and listened to the whole thing and all the hurts, all the fears, all the different, and he listened to it all. And in that, over and over again, talking, that was the most healing experience of my life.
So you were able to accept all that had happened to you, and
Yeah.
but it took you a long time to forgive that person.
Oh, that happened to me in my teens. And so I'm 28, 29, 30 when this is all being worked out inside of me in the seminary.
And how long did it take you to forgive? I mean, a period or
10 years. How long it was
Yeah.
before I saw
it took you 10 years to accept what had happened and to forgive?
to accept what happened. It took me 10 years to actually
Wow.
accept what happened
Wow.
to me. And then to work that all through. I'm completely at peace with all of the whole thing now, but it takes that much time. And my depression taught me a new way to live. I guess I should say it that way. That makes sense?
Yep.
Everybody?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, we only have a couple of minutes left. I want to get on to what the last part of the book is called the healing process. And they insist that prayer is such a critical part of the healing
yes.
process.
I read that. Yes.
So how important do you think prayer is to get through this? Like, did you pray when you were going through your pain and your challenges? Did you pray for relief, acceptance, understanding? Please make sense of this. Or
Okay.
did you not?
Okay. Prayer, I started to try to pray, really pray, when I was about 26, 27. I made a conscious effort to try to pray. But I knew whenever I was trying to pray, if I got deep enough, I was hitting this wound that happened to me.
Okay.
And so therefore I got scared. And I would push this wound down and I got scared. And so the prayer wasn't working in the sense that I every time I got a little closer down there, it wasn't working. So whenever I went to the seminary and Father Minocchio was helping me through that, I was able to bring up the monster of this wound that was torturing me and face it. And once I faced it, it kind of went away. It evaporated into thin air. And then I was able to pray. Now, the prayer they're talking about here is they call it focusing.
Mm-hmm.
And this focusing is working through and they give you steps. If you have the book, folks, I think it's on page 73 in here. I forget what page that focusing is on.
Well, let's see.
It's not 73. I'm wrong about that.
Focusing is chapter 13, so it starts on page 107.
Okay.
Focusing prayer. Is that what you're looking
There's
for? Before the Emmaus. This focusing prayer. 107.
I'm on page 110. Here's the
There's a lot
focusing
that
prayer
goes again.
process.
Yeah, right.
This the 107 is where you want to start reading, but 110 and 111 is a
Right.
process to work through, and it's almost like I kind of like without knowing it work through this whole process. They call it focusing.
Imagine yourself in the presence of someone who loves you, such as God or your best friend. Take some deep breaths, fill your body with that love. That's
Sure.
not easy to do.
No,
right?
no, not at all. But if you really want to get through it, and how many of you have monsters down there that you need to get rid of or deal with? I'm promising you, folks, if you let those because you're going to believe like I did, those monsters will destroy you. So you keep on pushing them down. But once you let them up again and you allow them to become to come to the surface, you'll find out that monster is a guppy. And it's nothing. And once it goes away, you're a free person. And that process in 110, 107 is a process of being able to do that. That's what they're really driving at.
And they talk about focusing on the Emmaus prayer. Maybe you're having an issue trying to get there. They say, read the story of the disciples on the road to Emmaus.
Yeah.
Imagine yourself walking that road with Jesus. And like the two disciples, you want to share with Jesus a hurt in your life, which they did. Look what happened. Look what they did to our God. Watch what he says and does for you. Tell Jesus what was said, made that situation painful. Let him tell you how he feels about what happened to you. Watch what he says and does for you. Take some deep breaths. Take in all the love he wants to give you. That's not easy
No,
with you're facing where you think you've been wronged or hurt.
Yeah.
Or people have taken
But I
advantage
don't know,
of
there's
you.
no other way. There's no other way. And the creative solution, of course, because they believe that violence won. you know?
Yeah.
And so the creative solution was the resurrection, God's creative solution, and all that. So no, none of this is easy, folks. Like I told you, that happened to me maybe 19, 18 years old. I was 29, 30 going through this stuff. It takes a while. But most of us watching here over the age of 21, you know, let's work it through now. It's about time we work it through, and I'll be glad to work through it with you. Maybe not this week because it's kind of busy, but I'll work through it with you. But at the same time, once you let the monster up, that caused that hurt that happened to you, I promise you'll have that freedom that Jesus talks about like you never had before.
Jerry wants to slide in.
Yeah,
here real
yes,
quick.
we just have some comments and so on that I think would be a good way to just start next week's show with, because there's, we're out of time here.
Yes, we
to
are. Go
read
ahead.
through them. So
Oh, you want to do some more? You have, that'd be
no,
good.
next
That'd be
week.
fine. That'd be
If you-
great.
Well,
That'd be
next week
good.
we were going to talk about Holy Week, but
Yeah.
if you can get it in quickly in the top of that show there, buddy,
yeah,
I won't have any anger. I won't be in
Yeah, but-
denial that you're trying to.
We won't get depressed.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
yeah,
But
we are out of time, so
and I was thinking, and this is going to sound like you put me up to this, but you didn't, because I'm sitting here taking all this in. What you're saying to do, that's a good place for reconciliation, isn't it?
Don't do it in the confessional 10 minutes before mass. Let's sit down sometime for
That's
half
what I
an hour
mean.
or
It's
so. Yeah.
but not the quick bang. I did
right,
this, but
right.
that's where spiritual direction or a conversation. And while you may not be able to talk to 100 people all in one day,
Right.
you'll make the time for them.
Yeah. And when you find, then there's a freedom that you never knew before.
We'll end
Okay.
on that. Let's
All right.
end on that.
Thanks everybody for watching us tonight.
See you next week.